welcome back. It's Christine again with the Artist Pod, and today we'll be talking about how to draw a minimalist tuxedo cat. As always, I'm using a Wacom Intuos Pro tablet. I'm drawing straight into Photoshop, so let's get arting. Alright, so here's the sketch I did of the cat. So at first I added ears, but I don't think that looks right, especially when you're dealing with like a tuxedo cat. Their ears are black as well. But the insides can be white, you know, they have that white fluff, but when I drew that out, it didn't quite look right. So I ditched that, and I still think at this point, even without the ears, that the rest of the black should still work with just the white here on the face. So we're going to draw that out. We're going to start with the white. It should be relatively straightforward. What's amazing about our minds is we do a lot of filling in, and so even with just these features, it fills in a lot, and I use the eyebrows that cats have, which we'll draw in white, for the placement of roughly where the ears would be going up. So that should also help give that visual cue of where that would be sort of subconsciously to us. But our brains are so amazing in that capacity, and we're kind of using that in this composition as minimalist as it will be. So as I mentioned, we're going to start with the white. And then we're going to give it, you know, it's going to have a pink nose and then green eyes. So like always, I'm going to start by the nose and build up from there. So when I'm drawing, right, it's one line, one in between, and then following as the contour moves over, right? As this comes over, so too does the lines. And they'll kind of be going straight out. Right, as we build that down, and we'll follow the nose around till we get to the inside, which is going to be angled just a little bit in, but not a lot. Originally, when I was sketching it, I was just going to have the chin be white, but I thought it would be good to give the I don't know, cheeks white as well. A lot of tuxedo cats have this little strip coming up. So I thought, might as well do that, since it's pretty common. And so I went with that instead. And what I liked about that is with this looping up, it should give kind of that sensation of the cat smiling more than just the chin would give, because the chin would stop before it loops back up, which indicates to us kind of a smile. So there's potential to give sort of a peaceful look to the cat, and I didn't want to take that away. So when you're coming off the nose, it's important to kind of come straight out. You know, you're coming in this and coming straight out at it. Instead of, there's an urge, I see it myself, when I'm drawing, to loop down, right, as I'm coming to loop it down, but you don't want to do that. It's going to be a lot better just to come straight out, and you can loop it once you get to the end, right? If I come here and I want to get a little bit of a curve, that's fine, but not off the nose itself. And just pull it all the way to the edge, and we'll get the chin too. And then we'll add shadows and highlights. So there's not a ton for us to do with this composition, because we're letting the black stand pretty solidly despite so much information being there. There's enough of a cat in here that we shouldn't have to do much more to fill it in, but still bringing it all the way over. And then right as it comes up, it would come straight up the middle here. As you're looping, a good rule of thumb that I follow is I'll often, you know, as you come to the edge of the nose, start angling it towards this corner of the eye, right? So these angles here should be aiming that way, and it's okay if there's some overlap here. That won't really matter, because it won't be looping up until it gets above, and down here it'll be looping down. In fact, I probably was a little underzealous with the turning that's going to be happening, because there's going to be a turn with the way the nose would be, right, you have a hump, so inevitably the fur would change direction as it gets towards the under the eyes. And then of course the chin, you know, coming straight down the middle, and then looping it on either side. Right, looping it, you can see I'm turning it this way. Yeah, do that. I'm turning it this way, or I'm turning it that way, and down the middle, it's going down the middle. That helps avoid line conflicts, because I have the middle to avoid the line conflicts, and then I can turn it with the contour of the chin, because it's going to be, you know, sort of rounded. And making sure that there's a distinct stop between the chin and right, if I take that off, you can see there's a distinct, we can kind of see where the cheeks are and the chin starts. So that's important, and that's going to happen by stopping those lines. If they're not blended in like they are up here, you know, where we're not weaving them together, then it'll look like something different is happening. And the same is true once we add shadows and highlights. So this is still just a sketching step. It's just meant to get the order of the strokes set so that we know exactly what we're doing. Pulling this all the way over, just like we did with the other side. It's just going to go straight out. Could add little bulges here or there. I opted not to for the moment, but that may change just because I opted not to because I feel like it's pretty common, this pattern, and any extra bulge or anything else we do will be less and less common. I've never had a tuxedo cat. The cat I had that was the closest. She was gray, and so she was a gray and white pattern and had that stripe up the middle of her nose with green eyes, but she was not black and white like a tuxedo cat. Otherwise the pattern was the same though. She had the white underbelly, the gray mask, whereas tuxedo cats have a black mask. She lived a very long time. I got her when I was 11, I think, and she lived until she was 19. So you just pull it straight out. Right, and so this is what we have so far. Cute little face. We'll have to fix any weird angles. And then, you know, just pulling it up. And then, you know, the top will potentially be jagged in different ways just because the nature of the way fur and all that works. Doesn't matter if you go off the edges of how this fur pattern's working. Because there would be some overlap between the white and the black. And it doesn't have to be perfectly symmetrical. Like this one is not, just because, right, different coloring, the way it works with different cats, it's just, you can be a little looser when you're doing this kind of style, this minimalism, and you're using like fur color and pattern. Right, so then we have the basic. We're going to do the whiskers and the eyebrows last, so now we're going to do the pink real fast of the nose. And that's, you know, again, down the middle, you're going to come straight down. They have a dip in their noses here, so, and then as you come off to the sides, looping it, I find to be a little better just because it indicates that there's some contour. Coming down and looping it again at the bottom. Same thing over here, looping it the other way. You don't have to though, you can come straight down. It's also a little easier and gentler when you come to an edge and you're looping that edge because you're inclined to shadow that same way, which makes it a little easier to stick to an edge instead of running off of it. The nose, you need to be a little tighter on than with the fur change colors, just because, you know, we're used to noses looking a certain way. See, that's all it really needed to look like a cat. Cats and dogs have such distinctive noses, we can usually tell when we look at them. And then when we add the eyes and the whiskers, that'll be kind of a done deal. All right, so light source I'm going to have above and to the right. So I'm going to go ahead and add highlights to this. So let me pop this off. So light source above and to the right, coming down. As always, that means it's above and in front of, not behind or next to. That would change how it's shadowed. This gives it the best opportunity to be in highlight. For the most part, most of this is going to be in highlight. All edges are in shadow. And of course, this back edge is going to be in more shadow because you have that big loop happening, and then the chin's going to have more, and I'm probably going to do the chin all in shadow before I do highlight. So let's get the shadows in place, because you have the nose that bulges up, and then you have that slight dip that's starting to happen. So to draw that in, to draw these shadows, I'm not putting full pin pressure. It's significantly tapered off. Just very light pin pressure as I build this up. And bring it down. And then figuring out, there is going to be some highlighting that happens over here, but it'll be a little easier to sort out. So sometimes I'll, just like I'm going to do with the chin, I might do a little bit with this one. I'll add shadow all the way because it's easier to add highlight than it is to take it away. So I can add shadow to something, let me see how it looks, and then sort of, once shadow's in place, I don't have to put full pin pressure to highlight something up. I can just add more lines. So more lines, full pin pressure, they act the same way. And because of that, it gives me a little bit more control by adding shadows first. And then if I decide to add highlight more into where I put shadow, it's easy enough. I just add more lines. And so I'll do this a lot where I fill something fully in or I overshadow it, knowing that I'm going to be adding highlight into some of those spots just because it gives me that control. And this back edge, certainly shadow, but I'm going to push this up and more into it, where it would be getting some highlight through some of this, just because it'll be easier to dictate exactly where that's going to be. Just with that light pin pressure. And we'll do it all the way up. Might as well do it all the way to connect it in, if we're going to do it all the way. Go big or go home. I don't know that that's exactly right in this case. Go little or go home? Probably use some of that in shadow right up against the nose. Anyway, where the nose would be bulging a little bit. I pulled that a little close, but we're going to ignore that for now. And then we'll do the chin after we do this, all in shadow as well. And then we'll add in the highlights. And then, we'll do the edge of this one. We probably only need to go up part way because at some point it would be connecting into the rest of the face, which we don't see because it's black. All right, we're going to pull that in because we pulled it so much, but definitively some of this is highlight. Okay, so that's one side of it. So the chin, and we're going to pull it up just a little bit more. Push this up a little higher. Otherwise, doing it all in highlight. And luckily, because we're leaving black to stand on its own, the highlighting should go pretty easy because it will be full pin pressure. It can be hard. I'm trying to draw, you know, when I'm drawing on black and I'm trying to create black, I'll use a mid-tone gray, but then it becomes hard to make the mid-tone gray look like it's black, and so can't usually use full pin pressure, but if I go too dark, it won't show up. So there's definitely a balancing act that happens at that point. Not the biggest fan of that. It's a little bit more of a strain when I'm drawing. I have to put more concentration into what I'm doing. So I love things like this where I can kind of half draw something and let black really stand out. It makes a much more dramatic composition. And I've done it before with things like a ladybug or a poison dart frog, where you put just enough information in with the color, and then the rest of it you leave blank where there's black, and it fills in just enough that our brains connect all the dots, and that's what this is doing too. This is filling in just enough that our brains are like, ah, it's a cute cat, without actually finishing the composition. And, you know, honestly, black cats blend in very well to their surroundings. It's a little nerve-wracking. My roommate years ago had 2 black cats, and sometimes, you know, especially you come in the house, it's late, they're dark, you don't want to step on them. I had enough trouble when I had my brown tabby cat, who was an absolute sweetheart, but he was dark enough that sometimes I wouldn't see him when the lights were off. You get up in the morning to go to work or whatever, and you stumble out of bed and you're like, oh gosh, where's the cat? Because he would always be right there somewhere. But it's more pronounced with black cats because they just disappear into their surroundings. Okay. So we're going to add some shadowing on this side. But it's not going to be as much. And honestly, at the end of the day, it may end up being more bright, because when I add in the highlights, it might brighten up this side of it as I readjust, but it'll still be in shadow in comparison. So we're not going to come up but so far. And I still need to make sure that this doesn't look weird when I'm done, based on the shape. So I'm going to bring this up, and then see that it's running into the face probably at this point. So the rest of this would be highlight. And that is full pin pressure, right? You can see the difference. What's nice about the white into the black is we can add all the other details, and if I do decide I need to change something about it, it'd be easy enough to do. Okay, so in this changeover point, I'm going to probably end up changing this, but so right where I'm connecting in, I'm backing off my pin pressure. That's going to help me blend the two together. But this is going to be a little bit more blended anyway, so we'll worry about fully blending it in just a second. All right, connecting that in, putting that full pin pressure in place. Now over here, kind of the same thing, except I'm going to add a little bit of shadowing under the nose, just like we did on the other side. Okay, and then you have that blended spot where it's not as, and this would be going into shadow, right? You have the loop of the cheek that comes to this point here, so this would be going into shadow as it dips down. But still backing off pin pressures and blending it as it comes out of that spot. And then pushing into full pin pressure kind of in that middle. And then backing it off again as we come down here to connect in. And we'll readjust because we want that to be nice and neat, right? So we're getting kind of that sensation. So backing this off here, but still putting more pin pressure. It's not fully released. And then really putting on pin pressure kind of here in the middle. coming it down, or toning it down as you come on the edge, making that blend a lot easier, because if you come roughly to the edge, it can be hard to blend these. You tend to sort of draw yourself into a little bit of a corner. You can do it, but it's a little trickier, I've found, so I'll just blend it all the way to an edge. And then, pull this up. Same thing all the way up. Allow that to blend in. And then as we come up more and more, right, this edge will start turning into full highlight as it would be running into face instead of into an edge. Right, so this is coming up, and we can push this highlight down if we need to. And as I do that, as I push into this section that's already got lines, I back off my pin pressure because it already has lines. So in those areas, once again, I'm backing off my pin pressure because more lines, like more pin pressure, will both create highlight. And coming off the nose in that pattern. And then just connecting it. It's relatively straightforward. Right, because you'll want that to turn. This is still that mixed pin pressure. That was a little much, but that's fine. Straight line, that's a little much, it's okay. It's if it's a whole bunch of them. It's a little bit more problematic. Alright, so then the rest of the way up here on this side is highlight. So, chin, again, not full pin pressure, it's just going to be more lines. But you're going to have, the bulge happening where you're going to have highlight here. So I'm just adding more lines in, a little bit more pin pressure, but not full pin pressure because I don't need it. By adding in more lines and that little bit of extra pin pressure, it's going to do the work for me. I'm going to pull that over. And then, you have, as you're considering the light source, the bump of the chin, it would still have some highlight as it comes over, but we are just starting the process of tapering this off. So less lines, less pin pressure as we bring it over. It's okay, again, if straight lines come down. That was not like that. That was not even in line with what I was doing. And then just slowly tapering that off. Sometimes I'll call it a runway where you have a lot of distance to be able to do that. And then you can brighten up again with more lines, not more pin pressure, but that'll brighten it up where you need to make it look like it's doing the right thing. So leaving the gap at the bottom for that shadow and at the top where these are rolling into each other, and you're starting to get that sense of a cat nose. Okay, this side, same thing that we just did with the chin. We're going to add in some highlights over here. Because you can kind of see, right, if I back out right now, this is looking kind of flat. But there would be a bulge. The nose isn't doing enough really to hide the fact that there would be light hitting the cheek over here. So this would be in highlight. Not fully. You're going to have a deeper shadow on the back side than you do on the side closest to the light source, but still pronounced enough. So again, not full pin pressure, just more lines. And staying consistent with where my edge is. So I still need all of this to blend. Just pulling this all the way up, and we're going to connect it back in to the nose up here at the top. Pull it all the way up, blend that right back into over here. We're going to fix this just a little bit. Right, I gave myself a little bit of a runway. I knew I was doing that because I knew I would need room to do this, to sort out the highlight here. And then pulling it over. And I can brighten it up where I need to. It's relatively easy just like we did with the chin, right? I can just add more lines, brighten it up in places, bring in that highlight a little closer to the nose, brighten up what I think would be brightened up. And then making sure this is blended. And then, okay. Then I'm going to do the rest of this and highlight this little strip, and I will be right back. And the rest of this will be full pen pressure highlight. All right. So there we have the nose, or that face. I'm going to do the nose real fast. That should be pretty quick. So there's a dip in the nose, roughly here. So this would be in shadow, right? It's going to come right. This middle section will change a little bit from what we just did. There's going to be some shadowing under as it dips down under here. Likewise on the other side, and of course on the other side it's going to be a deepening shadow because, well, it's opposite side of the light source. There's going to be some shadowing under here where it's rounding down into the nostril. And then, you know, just that little bit of an edge. And then this side, the whole side will be in shadow because it's away, but also under the nostril before we add the highlight. Right, so all the way connecting in. And then a little deeper. Okay, so then we'll have the highlight. We're putting that full pen pressure. Being mindful of blending it in. I'm backing off as I come down. Now we have this section here where it's going into shadow, so I'm going to back off as we come over here. Opposite side, I'm going to have a harsher highlight against the edge, just so that it looks like it's catching. You want the, just like what we'll do with the eyes, an edge is going to catch the light when the other edge is going into shadow, and that creates the look of a dip. And then as we bring it over, tapering this off, I'm going to fade this out a little gentler. Again, that's just adding more pen pressure instead of, adding more lines instead of more pen pressure. And then full highlight over here. A little bit on the edge and shadow. And then making sure it's blending in. Alright, just coming under here, blending it better than what I just did. And we can brighten up sections if I need to blend a little better. Alright, there we have a cat's nose. See, this looks a little harsh to me right here, this transition, so I'm going to add just a few more lines to brighten that up. So it's not quite as noticeable. Just blending in. So I like to pull back because it gives me a different perspective, and often I'll catch things pulled back that I don't see when I'm up close. Sometimes something might look right up close and it does not when you pull away. But that is looking sufficiently cat-like. Okay. Now, just debating on if I should do the eyes or the whiskers. Let's do the whiskers. We'll do the eyes last. Okay. Whiskers are nice and easy. They shouldn't take very long at all. When I do them, I draw from the shoulder. So, you know, you're going to position your pen, and then you're going to use your shoulder to make the motion. I'm not putting full pen pressure. So these are all light swipes. You want to, you know, have them going down in different directions. You want to bunch them up, so you don't want single whiskers off by themselves. You can have some a little wobbly, but that was a little excessive. Want to make sure you're starting nicely and solidly in their mid-cheek and then angling it as you come up. Sometimes because you're making quick swipes, you'll have to erase some, right, as I come up, changing that angle. And then whatever you do on one side, you need to do on the other. So we have some coming down, and then as they work over, how many are over? You don't have to match it perfectly, but it'll look off. Like if I stopped here and didn't have any going up, it would not look right. So because I have some coming up over here, they need to come up on that side as well. That was a little much though. In roughly the same length, doing the same thing though. Drawing from my shoulder. I can stay. And then readjusting as I need to, both sides. Making sure it looks nice and realistic. Putting in some that have a little bit more pin pressure. I'll do the same thing on this side. Or some are probably jagged, pulling forward. Okay. And then we'll do, now this is not mini swipes. Swipe, 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 swipe. Yeah, that's fine. Swipe. Whoop, that's not fine. Swipe, swipe. Not fine. Yeah, okay. Right. Just readjusting some of this, so I have a bunch where I don't over here, so okay. All right, so then the last thing to do is to add the green on the eyes. I don't know if this is the right green or not, but I feel like we're going to readjust this just a little bit. Make it a little less, I mean, cat's eyes can be yellowy green, but I feel like this is just not, it didn't quite look like a good color. All right. 13. Okay. So, unlike what I usually do, I'm probably going to do the full circle. Usually I allow the shadow up here to block it, but because we're not drawing the whole cat, it'll be beneficial to draw the whole thing and then just have an extreme shadow on the top. So we're going to put a pupil in here, which I'm probably going to make bigger than that, and do it on both sides. See, I made that one bigger than that. And then go all the way around. At the end of this, though, we're going to be using the elliptical Maki tool to clean up the edge of the pupil. And then if I decide something isn't quite right, or I want it bigger because I want, you know, that really like cute, excited cat look that they get, I can always do that. Bringing that all the way over, just doing kind of a big circle around the black pupil. And the lines don't have to be straight, you can kind of see that. Along the edges of the eye, though, I do want to be careful. Eyes are the first things we look at, so if something's a little off there, the composition won't look right to a viewer. So after I get kind of situated, I need to pop this sketch layer off because I need to make sure these are nice and clean lines. And if they're not, I need to fix it. So they're not yet, but we're going to fill this in and go from there. And then make sure that's connected in. Right, I don't want those loose lines to be sort of these random placements. I want it nice and as clean as we can get it. It won't be perfectly straight, but the cleaner the better. It's going to look a little wild until we add shadows and highlights. Looks very exciting. Same thing over here. All right, I'm going to finish filling in this eye. Well, so right down here I would fix that, pull that in. Same thing over here. Just that bit so that they're connected. And up here you have that gap right there. Pulling that down. Okay, so I'm going to fill in the rest of this eye, and I will be right back. Okay, so now we're going to take the elliptical marquee tool. I'm going to come in here and give a nice big excited looking pupil, just making sure that it's looking at us. And we're going to erase it, and then I'm going to do select inverse, take the drawing tool and draw along the edge. And the reason I do that is I want to make the line around the pupil as clean as possible. Because of the style that we're drawing in, it makes it a little hard. So this will give it a nice clean edge. And then I'm going to select inverse it back, reselect the elliptical marquee tool and drag it to the other side, where I'm going to do the same thing, line it up, make sure it's looking at us, erase it, come up here, select inverse, take the brush tool and brush along the edge. And then we are going to deselect. Right. Yeah, it looks pretty cute. Didn't do a good job on this side, but that's okay. We can fix that just a little bit. It's close. The other side, you can kind of see it. I'll go back out and you can kind of see. Right. This side looks like a nice clean circle because I did it right. This side, not as much. Okay. Now that we have that in place, we have a very excited looking cat. We are going to add highlights. So light source coming from above and to the right. So there's going to be a burst of light against the pupil on the opposite side of the light source. So that's right through here. So this is just like we did with the dip in the nose, right? You have a recess, like a cup or something, for instance. The edge of the cup on the side of the light source would be going into shadow as it dips down into the recess, and the back edge would be in highlight where it's coming back out of that. Right, so and we're going to fade that edge so it's not so blinding. Going to do the same thing on this side. Following that edge, full pin pressure, even though I know we've drawn in here. Still full pin pressure for that. Okay, so we have that edge catching the light, and then we're going to do full pin pressure on the side of the light source. It's going to go into shadow along the edge and along the pupil and up top. So we're going to bring this over to a certain point and then taper that off as it goes into shadow. But the highlight itself is going to come all the way down and underneath the eye, connecting into this burst against the pupil, so it's not that won't just be floating by itself, it needs to have a connection point. And then allowing the shadow to connect into itself, right? All the way under the eye, so all of this, all the way to the edge. This line's got a little wild, but that's fine. Because it's full pin pressure, it'll be hidden as we pull it over. Alright, pulling that over and then tapering it off. Now, as I decide this angle needs to match the angle of the eye, so it's going to dip down, it's going to come up and dip down. That edge is important to make it look right. And then we're going to fade it as we bring it up into what is essentially the darkest of the shadowed sections. It's being blocked by the eyelid, so you'd have a nice deep shadow up here, but we need to smooth it out a bit. It's not quite smooth enough just yet. edge and shadow right, so we bring this over as we get to the edge, backing off that pin pressure. Same thing, get to the edge, backing off that pin pressure. And then backing off that pin pressure as we bring it down. And then as we come over here, right against this, we're going to have a little bit of light as it's tapering off. But otherwise, this is also in shadow on this side. Not as much shadow as up top, though. So I'm going to be adding a few more lines. And then, you know, no matter what we do, I'll potentially need to brighten this up. I usually do on this side, so that the top remains darker. And then, as I said before, we got to clean this up a bit. Too many jagged openings. Not quite filled in, just not quite enough. Not much, so I need to be careful here. I don't want to do too much. I just want to get rid of the big gaps. And because that brightens it up just a bit, I have to bring kind of that all the way around. Usually I'll really brighten up through here because I really want this to stand out. Eyes are nice and important. On this one they're nice and big. So I just want to make sure everything's blended, bright, looking snazzy. So now we'll do the same thing basically on this one, except there's less highlighting space because of the nature of where the pupil is, right? So same idea though. Nice bright highlight going into a shadow on either side, going into a shadow against the pupil as well, but coming underneath and connecting in to the highlight that's under here, and then all of this in highlight. And I just needed a reference to see how high I brought this highlight over here because I need to balance that out. It doesn't need to be as high, but it probably needs to be higher than what I originally did. Coming over here, backing off that pin pressure, but making sure to fade out that highlight as we back that off. So this backside's in shadow. We'll blend it in. And as we bring it up, top would be in more shadow. Should leave it with an excited little cat face. Okay, so now I need to taper up this side so that it's a bit brighter, because it would be. That's nice and easy though. Already added the shadows, so don't have to do much. And then we can really brighten up this section to adjust, which I usually do. Allows that to fade into the other. And then just balancing both sides. Yeah. Now, the last thing to do on the eyes, which is always the most important, is the light flare. So I typically take the elliptical marquee tool. I'm going to choose a spot that's within the highlight. Not too big, but his eyes are so big I feel like we could make it a little bit bigger. Push it a bit into the pupil, and then just hit edit, fill, foreground color, and then drag that selection to the other side to do it roughly in the same spot. On one eye as we do the other, and then fill, select, deselect, and then there we go. We have a cute little cat face. Alright, so that is how you do kind of a minimalist tuxedo cat. I hope that's helpful. In the floating nether next to me, I have other videos of art tutorials I have done, and I will see you all soon. Thank you so much. Take care.